you claim that if you're a follower of Srila Prabhupada and Srila Sridhar Maharaj, it would seem that this position that if you took this position that this was just a preaching strategy, those are incompatible ideas. To be a Shiksha disciple of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, direct disciple of Prabhupada, or both, and then take this position. It just seems completely irreconcilable. That you could be claimed to be a follower of Sridhar Maharaj and take the opposite position.
Well, there are people who claim to be followers of Mahaprabhu and take the opposite position. We lump them all in one big group called Sahajis. Originally, there were, 13 or 14 mentioned by Ramda...
Totaram.
13. Mm-hmm. We recently extended that verse to include a few more. And it wasn't too far back, somebody said there used to be 13, now there are hundreds. So, and they all claim to be followers of Mahaprabhu, every one of these Sahajiya Upasampradayas. So that's just how, the second generation devotees and even many of Prabhupada's disciples who never had a chance to speak with him personally or sit in a room with him in a casual way or put his shoes on for him or wrap the chadar around his shoulder. And they might be thinking, wow, devotees are so fortunate to be able to do that. And indeed they were. But many of those people who were able to do those things and be very, very close to his divine grace, well, then they fell victim to Maya. And it just wasn't once that this happened in history. This has happened many times in history. Going back one generation before Prabhupada, it came to, two of the top disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, who were great Sanskrit scholars. They turned against their guru after his disappearance. We saw some of Srila Prabhupada's disciples do that during his presence. They turned against him. We saw others after his disappearance try to usurp the position of Srila Prabhupada, even move into his rooms in the Bombay temple. They wanted to occupy Srila Prabhupada's rooms. They wanted to occupy his seat, many things, his titles, so many things. They wanted to usurp his movement. Luckily, this was a smaller group, and overall, they as individuals pretty much failed. But we see that this happened. So yes, it is hypocritical. Srila Puri Maharaj said, follow in the footsteps very closely. And a lot of times, this happens, one expands his learning, and in doing so, begins to read books hither and thither, here and there, the opinions of scholars and things. But once again, I say these scholars most of them are just that. They're just scholars, armchair philosophers. They are not practitioners. And even amongst some of them that are, there's questions could be raised about their paramparas. They like to raise questions about our paramparas, but let me tell you, people who live in glass houses don't need to throw stones. So instead of caving in to the complaints, like when the Madhva says, oh, you guys quote 24 books that don't exist, we came back and hit him right between the eyes and said, Madhva quotes 200 books that don't exist, so ha! How about that? Instead of acquiescing to these opinions of people outside our sampradaya, who decry our sampradaya, and trying to pacify these scholars and these intellectuals and these Sahajiya deviant groups with their questionable paramparas, it's the duty of the disciple to defend the position of the spiritual master. And sometimes one has to take it a step further to actually explain why the spiritual master said something and what he could have said or would have said under different circumstances. And that might sound strange to your ears, but I bring you the story of Jiva Goswami writing that Swakiya Bhav was the highest and giving indication that his ras was Swakiya Bhav. That's the legitimate paramour love of Krishna between the queens of Dwarka and Lord Krishna. It's called Swakiya. Well, later, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur demonstrated that actually Jiva Goswami is all about paramour ras And what is that word I'm searching for?
Parakya.
Parakya ras, the paramour relation, breaking that legitimate bond and transgressing the Vedic laws, the paramour relation, and that it is both higher and it is sweeter to Krishna, and he had to take it, as I just mentioned. Sometimes a disciple may have to explain what the spiritual master would have liked to have said, okay, in a different set of circumstances. I have given an example about Srila Prabhupada wrote articles, Christ is Guru, or Christ in Christo, and then things like this. He's come to a Christian country and he's preaching like this. And Srila Prabhupada knew only what the Christians had to say about Christianity. But now, 40, 50 years on, the amount of research that's been done into Christianity, so many new books, new Bibles that they never knew existed before have been found, and it brings Jesus Christ into a very different picture, and in some places even questions that he ever existed at all. So what Srila Prabhupada may comment about Jesus today may be quite different.